The family sold her as Barren, but the widowed rancher said, "I don't need children, I need you." Jesse had spent years on his ranch alone after his wife Mary passed away. The large property seemed endless, with miles of dry land and hills that looked like they would never end. His cattle were his only company now. Each day was the same. Wake up before dawn, tend to the animals, fix broken fences, and go to bed tired, only to wake up and do it all over again. Sometimes the silence of the ranch seemed to echo louder than anything else. Jesse had never been a man who needed much. After Mary's death, he had given up on love and companionship. The ranch kept him busy, and the work was enough to fill his time, but it didn't fill the emptiness inside. He missed the warmth of a person to talk to share a meal with, to help carry the weight of life. One afternoon, as he was fixing the gates near the barn, he saw a dust trail on the horizon. A small wagon appeared, the horses struggling under the hot sun. The wagon stopped in front of the ranch, and out stepped a woman. She was tall, with brown hair pulled back in a loose braid, and her eyes were tired but sharp. Her name was Eliza, and her life had been full of pain and disappointment. The thought of it still stung her heart. She had been told she wasn't good enough, not because of who she was, but because she couldn't have children. The world saw her as barren, a woman who couldn't carry on her family's name, who couldn't give a man the gift of a child. She had left her family behind, walking for miles to escape the shame they had placed on her. She had no one left, and the loneliness had started to sink in. That was until she found herself on the road to Jesse's ranch. When she arrived, Jesse looked at her with an unreadable expression. "What brings you here?" he asked in his calm voice. "I need work," Eliza said, her voice strong despite the doubt she felt. "I can help with the animals, with the house." "Whatever you need." Jesse studied her for a moment. She didn't look like the type who would give up easily. He had seen many people come and go from this land, but something about her seemed different. Perhaps it was the quiet strength in her eyes, or maybe it was the fact that she was willing to walk so far just to find work. "All right," he said finally. "We could use another pair of hands around here. I'll show you where you can sleep, and then we'll get started tomorrow." Eliza nodded and followed him into the ranch house. As she entered, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her situation. This was a new beginning, but it was also a chance to prove to herself that she wasn't broken. She could work. She could be useful. She didn't need to be defined by what she lacked. Jesse was quiet as he led her through the ranch. He didn't say much about his life. He didn't need to. There was a part of him that wanted to stay hidden, to keep to himself. But when he saw Eliza settle into the small room he had offered her, he felt something stir within him. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just the thought that someone else would be here, that the silence of the ranch might be broken, even if only a little. The next morning, Eliza woke early. The sun was barely rising, and already the air was warm. She had never worked on a ranch before, but she had learned how to take care of things growing up. She had learned how to clean, how to cook, and how to keep herself busy. But today would be different. Today she would work for someone else. Jesse was already outside when she stepped onto the porch, his worn boots kicking up dust as he worked on the fence. She took a deep breath, trying to gather her courage. She walked over to him, offering to help with whatever he needed. "Morning," Jesse said, barely looking up from the fence. "Morning," Eliza replied. "What do you need me to do?" Jesse glanced over at her, then pointed toward the barn. "There's some hay in there. I need it brought to the west side of the ranch. I'll finish up here." Eliza nodded, grateful for something simple to start with. She made her way to the barn, the heavy weight of the hay bales feeling like a challenge she was ready to face. As she lifted each one, she reminded herself that she was strong, that she was not the weak woman others thought she was. She worked steadily, her body growing accustomed to the labor, the muscles in her arms and back beginning to ache in a way that felt right. This was the kind of work she was made for. As she moved the last bale into place, she noticed Jesse watching her from the other side of the ranch. He gave her a small nod, a silent approval, and Eliza couldn't help but feel a little lighter. Throughout the day, Jesse and Eliza worked side by side. Jesse showed her how to tend to the animals, how to repair broken fences, and how to keep the ranch running smoothly. Eliza had always been resourceful, but working alongside Jesse gave her a sense of purpose she had never known before. The silence that once hung heavy over her heart began to fade, replaced by the rhythm of the work and the comfort of being needed. That night, as they ate dinner in the small ranch house, Jesse spoke a little more than usual, sharing stories of his late wife and the years he had spent alone. Eliza listened, her heart aching for him in a way she hadn't expected. They were both survivors, each carrying the weight of their past, but together they were starting to build something new. Eliza finished her meal, the warmth from the food filling her. But it wasn't just the food that made her feel full. It was the fact that she wasn't alone anymore. She had a place here, she had value. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was more than just the person she had been told she was. As Jesse cleared the dishes, he looked over at her and spoke softly. "You're doing good work, Eliza. You've got a strong heart." Eliza looked up, her eyes meeting his, and for a brief moment, she felt something stir inside her, something she had long buried. Hope. Maybe this ranch, this place, could be a new home. Maybe Jesse wasn't the only one who had been waiting for a fresh start. The days on the ranch passed slowly but with purpose. Eliza and Jesse fell into a rhythm, each knowing their tasks without the need for much conversation. The sun rose each morning, bringing with it a promise of hard work and the comfort of routine. The heat of the day made the work even more difficult, but it also gave them something in common, a shared challenge. Eliza was learning quickly. Jesse was patient with her, showing her how to handle the cattle, how to mend broken fences, and how to make sure the water supply never ran dry. She had always been a quick learner, but there was something different about working on the ranch. It was more than just learning new skills. It was about proving to herself that she could do something important, something that mattered. Jesse, on the other hand, had grown used to solitude. The ranch had been his only company for so long that having another person around felt strange. He didn't know what to make of Eliza at first, but as the days went by, he found himself looking forward to her company. She had a quiet strength about her that was impossible to ignore. She didn't complain, even when the work was hard. She didn't back down, even when the days were long and the sun was hot. In her presence, he started to feel something he hadn't felt in years. A connection. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something, a feeling of respect and appreciation. He admired how she worked, how she never asked for anything more than what was necessary. She made sure every task was done well, even if it meant working late into the night. One afternoon, while they were mending a broken fence together, Jesse caught a glimpse of something in her eyes. A kind of sadness, a shadow that she tried to hide. He had seen it before, in his own reflection. It was the look of someone who had been hurt, someone who had been told they were not enough. He didn't ask about it. He didn't need to. He knew that pain all too well. As the day turned to evening, the two of them sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was a deep orange, the air cooler now. It was the kind of evening that made you forget the heat of the day, the kind of evening that made you feel like anything was possible. Jesse didn't say much, but Eliza spoke softly. "I've never felt like I belonged anywhere," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Not with my family, not with anyone." Jesse didn't answer right away. He understood. He had felt that way for years, ever since his wife had passed. He had pushed everyone away, thinking it would make the pain less. But it didn't. The loneliness only grew. "I used to think that if I worked hard enough, I'd be able to prove something," Eliza continued. "Prove that I'm worth something. But now I'm not sure anymore." Jesse looked over at her, his gaze steady but kind. "You don't need to prove anything to me, Eliza," he said. "You're doing good work. You're more than enough." Eliza didn't respond right away. She just nodded, taking in his words. It wasn't much, but for some reason it was enough. She hadn't expected to find kindness here, especially not from a man like Jesse, a man who had lost so much. As the days turned into weeks, Jesse began to notice how much Eliza had grown. She was more confident, more sure of herself. She didn't look at the ground as much when she spoke. She started to smile, a small smile that reached her eyes. It was a smile that spoke of hope, of something good. One afternoon, as they were working in the barn, Jesse noticed Eliza struggling with a heavy hay bale. It wasn't like her to ask for help, but she was clearly having trouble. Jesse was about to walk over and offer a hand when she suddenly looked up, meeting his eyes. "I'm all right," she said, her voice a little shaky but determined. I can do this." He didn't push her. Instead, he stood back and watched as Eliza struggled, her face flushed with effort. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the hay bale as if it were the only thing holding her up. Finally, with a soft grunt, she managed to lift the bale and carry it to the designated spot. She was exhausted, her breath coming in short gasps, but she didn't complain. Jesse knew that look in her eyes, pride. She had done it on her own. "You don't need to do everything alone, you know," Jesse said gently as she put the bale down. Eliza turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a kind of quiet defiance. "I've been alone for a long time," she said. "It's hard to ask for help." Jesse nodded, understanding more than she knew. "You don't have to ask. Just Let me know when you need me." She looked at him for a long moment, then gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was a smile that made his heart skip a beat, though he didn't let it show. He was starting to realize just how much he enjoyed her company, how much he needed her presence on the ranch. The following days were filled with more work, but also with small moments of connection. Jesse found himself sharing more with Eliza. Stories about his wife, memories of the past, and things he hadn't spoken of in years. Eliza listened patiently, never judging, always present. She never asked for anything from him, but in return Jesse gave her something he hadn't given anyone else, his trust. One evening, as they sat together on the porch once more, Eliza asked a question that had been on her mind for some time. "Why did you hire me?" she asked, her voice gentle. Jesse looked over at her, his expression thoughtful. "I didn't hire you because of what you could do. I hired you because I saw something in you. You're strong, Eliza. Stronger than you think. I knew you could handle it." Eliza smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She didn't know why, but Jesse's words meant more to her than she had expected. It was the first time in a long while that someone had truly seen her, not just as the woman who couldn't have children, but as someone who had worth, someone who had the strength to survive. "I've never been told that before," she said quietly. "Well, it's about time someone did." They sat there for a long time, the silence between them comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Neither of them said anything more, but in that moment something had shifted. The connection between them was undeniable, a bond formed through shared work, shared pain, and the quiet strength they saw in each other. As the weeks passed, life on the ranch settled into a quiet routine. Jesse and Eliza worked side by side, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. The days were long and full of hard work, but there was a comfort in the rhythm of the tasks. They had found a sense of peace in the routine, each relying on the other in ways neither had expected. But despite the growing connection between them, there was a tension in the air, something unspoken, something neither of them was ready to address. Jesse noticed the way Eliza's eyes lingered on him sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking. And he knew, deep down, that the growing affection he felt for her was more than just appreciation for her hard work. But he didn't know how to say it, didn't know how to break the silence between them. It was a warm afternoon when the tension finally broke. Jesse had been working on the north fence, repairing a section that had been damaged in the last storm. Eliza was busy in the barn, checking on the animals. It was the perfect day for hard work, the kind of day that felt like everything was falling into place. But the moment was short-lived. As Jesse hammered in the final nail, a horse galloped across the horizon, kicking up a cloud of dust. He squinted into the distance, his brow furrowing as the rider came closer. It was Darren, a rancher from the neighboring land. Jesse had known Darren for years, but they weren't friends. In fact, Jesse didn't trust him. There was something about Darren's sharp smile and quick words that always made him uneasy. Darren pulled up to the fence where Jesse was working, his horse snorting as he stopped. "Jesse," Darren called, tipping his hat. "I see you've got a new worker." He grinned, glancing over at the barn where Eliza was. Jesse wiped the sweat from his brow and stood tall. "What do you want, Darren?" "Oh, nothing much. Just thought I'd offer your new help a better deal. You know, I could use someone with her skills over at my place." Jesse's jaw tightened, and a wave of protectiveness washed over him. He knew exactly what Darren was doing. He had heard rumors about Darren and the way he treated women. He wasn't the type of man who would offer help out of kindness. "I think she's doing just fine here," Jesse said, his voice steady but firm. Darren raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the discomfort he was causing. "Oh, I'm sure she is. But you know, there's more to life than just work. She's a woman, after all. Needs more than just a roof over her head, don't you think?" Jesse's fists clenched, and he stepped forward, standing toe-to-toe with Darren. "You don't talk about her like that," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Darren smirked, unbothered by the threat in Jesse's voice. "I'm just saying, Jesse, I'm a man who knows how to treat a woman right. She could have a life of luxury if she's willing to leave this place." Jesse took a deep breath, willing himself to remain calm. He wasn't about to let Darren cause any more trouble. "She's not leaving, and if you know what's good for you, you'll stay away from her." "We'll see about that." He gave Jesse one last look, then turned his horse around and rode off, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. Jesse stood there for a moment, his heart pounding. He didn't like the way Darren had spoken to him, but what bothered him more was the look in Eliza's eyes when she had seen the exchange. She had been watching from the barn, her face a mixture of confusion and hurt. Jesse didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable, but what could he say to make her understand? How could he explain that he was just trying to protect her? Later that evening, after the sun had set and the stars began to appear, Eliza came to find him. She had been quiet all day, and Jesse had noticed how distant she seemed. "Jesse?" she said softly, her voice hesitant. "I need to talk to you." Jesse turned to face her, his heart heavy. "I'm sorry about earlier. Darren has a way of saying things that—" Eliza shook her head, her eyes filled with something Jesse couldn't quite read. "It's not about that," she said quietly. "It's about me. About what he said. About what you think of me." Jesse's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know how to respond. He had never been good with words, especially when it came to matters of the heart. "Eliza, you don't need to worry about Darren," he said, his voice firm. "I don't care what he thinks. You're here because I wanted you to be here. Because you're doing good work. And because I respect you." Eliza looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "But that's all it is? Respect?" He didn't want to hurt her, but he didn't know how to explain the growing feelings he had for her. He'd always been a man of action, not words, and he didn't know how to fix the mess he had made of things. "It's more than that," he said finally, his voice low. "I care about you, Eliza. More than I've cared about anyone in a long time." Eliza's eyes softened, and she stepped closer, her heart racing. "Jesse," she whispered. I don't know what to say." Jesse reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to say anything. Just don't leave." Eliza looked at him for a long moment, the weight of his words settling in. She had never expected to find someone who cared about her, not after everything she had been through. But Jesse was different. He saw her for who she was, not for what others had said about her. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. "I found a place here. With you." Jesse felt a rush of relief, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to hope. Hope for something more than just survival. Hope for a future that wasn't defined by loss. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments. Moments when Jesse and Eliza could feel the connection between them growing stronger. But there was still the threat of Darren, lurking in the background. Jesse didn't know what Darren would do next, but he wasn't going to let him cause any more trouble. He would protect Eliza, no matter what. And as for Eliza, she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a life here. A life with Jesse. A life where she wasn't defined by her past or by what others thought of her. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Eliza felt like she had a chance. And with Jesse by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The days on the ranch were long, but they were full of hope. Jesse and Eliza had built something together, something neither of them had expected. Despite the challenges they faced, they had found a connection, something worth holding on to. Jesse had become more than just a man who ran a ranch. He had become someone Eliza could trust, someone who made her feel safe. And Eliza, with her quiet strength, had become the heart of the ranch. She worked hard, but she also brought something to the ranch that Jesse hadn't realized he had been missing. Warmth. But even as they grew closer, the shadow of Darren still hung over them. He had been quiet for a while, but Jesse knew it wasn't over. A man like Darren didn't give up easily. It was only a matter of time before he would come back looking for another way to get what he wanted. One afternoon, as Jesse and Eliza were working together near the barn, they heard the sound of a horse approaching. Both of them turned, and Jesse's heart sank when he saw Darren riding up the long path toward the ranch. Eliza could see the change in Jesse's face. She knew what was coming. She had seen the way Darren had looked at her before, and she knew he wasn't a man to back down easily. "Stay inside," Jesse said to Eliza, his voice firm. "I'll handle this." But Eliza shook her head, her expression determined. "No. I won't hide. This is my home now. I'll face him with you." Jesse looked at her, his eyes filled with concern. He didn't want her to face Darren, not after everything that had happened. But Eliza's gaze didn't waver. She was not afraid anymore. She had found something worth standing up for. Darren rode up to them, his horse snorting as it came to a stop. He looked at Jesse first, then turned his gaze to Eliza. The smile on his face was still the same, sharp, like a knife. "Jesse," Darren said, tipping his hat, "I see you've got company, but I think you already know what I'm here for." "I've already told you to stay away, Darren." Darren chuckled to sound cold and unfeeling. "You really think you can keep her here, don't you?" "She's a woman, Jesse. She needs more than just hard work. She needs someone who can give her a future, a life she deserves. A life she deserves. I don't need you to give me anything, she said calmly. I'm perfectly fine here. I've got everything I need. Darren raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting her to speak up. Is that so? He sneered. You really think you can find happiness out here, on this little ranch? Eliza stood her ground. I've found something here I never thought I'd have. Peace. And I'm not leaving. Jesse looked at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. He had always admired her strength, but seeing her stand up to Darren like this made him feel something more. He felt proud of her, proud of what they had built together. Darren's smile faded, replaced by a look of irritation. He turned to Jesse, his voice hard. You can't keep her here forever, Jesse. She deserves better. And I'll make sure she gets it, whether you like it or not.
Jesse's voice was steady as he spoke.
You've had your chance, Darren. I won't let you take her away. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The tension between them was thick, the air charged with the weight of their unspoken conflict. But then Darren, seeing that he wasn't going to win this fight, turned his horse around. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I always get what I want. Without another word, he rode off, leaving the ranch in silence. Jesse and Eliza stood there for a moment, the weight of the encounter settling over them. It wasn't over, not yet. Jesse knew that Darren would try again, that he would find another way to cause trouble. But for now, they had won. Eliza turned to Jesse, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, she said softly, for standing by me. Jesse shook his head. You don't need to thank me. You've got the strength to stand up for yourself. Eliza smiled, feeling something stir inside her, a warmth, a hope she hadn't felt in a long time. She wasn't just standing up for herself anymore. She was standing up for the life she had built with Jesse, the life they had both worked for. The following days were quieter, but there was still a sense of unease hanging over the ranch. Jesse kept his guard up, knowing that Darren wouldn't stay away for long. But Eliza wasn't afraid anymore. She had found her place here, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it from her. One evening, as they were finishing up their work for the day, Jesse and Eliza sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, the air cool and peaceful. Jesse turned to Eliza, his voice soft. I've been thinking about what you said. About how you found peace here. I feel the same way. I don't know if I could have made it through without you. Eliza looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. I never expected to find peace, Jesse, but here with you, I think I have. For a long moment they just sat there, the world around them quiet and still. They had both found something they never thought they would. Something that went beyond work, beyond survival. They had found each other. Jesse reached out, taking Eliza's hand in his. I don't need children to be happy, Eliza. I need you. You're all I need. Eliza's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of hope. She had never imagined she could find a place like this, a place where she was loved for who she was, not what she lacked. I need you too, she whispered. More than you know. As the night fell, they stayed there on the porch side by side, knowing that they had built something together, a future, a life, a love that was worth fighting for, and no matter what came next, they would face it together.